KBLA Talk 1580. You know him. You know him as the resident. Yes, indeed. Happy to have great voices with me this morning. Next up, a black writer from LA. He says he now lives in the other, much more humid LA. He's reported from more than a dozen U.S. states and abroad, including Uganda, Palestine, Mexico, and Vietnam. He's been published in the New York Times, The Guardian, and more. And he's the author of The Problem with Plastic, which is a 2026 release. Adam Mahoney, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for tapping in. I know it's early for y'all. I say y'all because, you know, so print journalists don't always get up at the crack of dawn. But I appreciate your joining me this morning.
Of course.
You know, you've got a pretty wide, you report on a lot of different kinds of stuff, right? Police issues, the environment, international issues. And you've done a great job of it. Columbia Journalism Review Award, Seal Awards, Anthem Awards, and all of that. How do you stay abreast of everything? How do you keep yourself informed of everything? And, you know, I partly say that because I'm on my media literacy tear, because I just think we're flooded with so much information, real and unreal, that it becomes more difficult to sort it.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it is a growing crisis, especially for everyday folks in this country in terms of getting access to accurate and legitimate news and information. I think for me, a lot of it is, following journalists and writers that I trust and respect more so than publications at large. Because oftentimes, there are folks reporting from different angles, political stances that it can kind of be hard to, wade through at the publication level. But if you trust, certain reporters, information sharers, one of them being, Phil Lewis, who is has a really big following on social media, but he kind of collects and collates Black news and news every single day and shares, the top stories and headlines. He's been really someone that I've, relied on a lot. And also, just building relationships with people who are working on issues that you care about, and tapping into them to see what they're following and reading. That's been helpful for me at even kind of the reporter level, is the relationships I've built with people outside of the news, who can kind of give me who have their ears and eyes on the ground and could give me that information.
Yeah, that's a really good, actually very concrete and doable piece of advice. Especially since Black people tend to do that anyway. We're more likely to go to a small Black paper or a trusted outlet. But beyond trusted outlets right now, with outlets shutting down and billionaires, taking over communications outlets, that's I think really solid advice. Um, and I think about this. We were talking yesterday on the air about how the Writers Guild of America is trying to stop this Warner Brothers merger, Warner Brothers Paramount, and the myth that the media is liberal. But the consolidation that we're seeing now is, I always have complained about it my whole career, but the consolidation that we're seeing now is on a new level. The FCC is now talking about removing caps on national broadcast ownership so that you can have one billionaire owning every radio station or every television station. That used to be against the law. These giant mergers where now one billionaire owns TikTok and CBS News, and if the merger goes through, will also own CNN and Warner Brothers. What do you think that means for the information landscape?
Yeah, I think that does just show and highlight that folks do need to kind of hunker down and tap into the news and information shares that they trust. There are obviously, listed all these kind of for-profit models, but us at Capital B where I work, a Black newsroom where nonprofit, there are other nonprofit models that are not as dependent on, well, not dependent on advertising at all, not necessarily dependent on, clicks and being, biased in one way or the other. It's really about actually sharing the realities of this country and of this world. But even that has its pitfalls, right? In 2026, because that means we're dependent on, large foundations funding us or breeders funding us. And, the economy is tight. Not everybody has $20 a month to send to their nonprofit news site to keep them afloat. At the same time, foundations that typically fund nonprofits have been under attack under the Trump administration. So it does feel like it's coming at kind of all or from every direction right now, whether you have the for-profit media that has its own issues and historical biases. At the same time, kind of new media, nonprofit media is struggling to get funding, which, I think kind of still just points us directly back to that original point of following the people you trust, because oftentimes, unfortunately, institutions are not lasting or are not lasting in the ways that they were created to do.
And also our influence or subject to the influence of the political waves. Foundations right now, many of them are under attack or they're under duress because of new policies coming in from the Trump administration where they're attacking things that are seen as DEI or whatever, and whatever other kinds of pressures they're under, which may make them more or less likely to fund certain people. Newsrooms ebb and flow according to their leadership and the ownership. And what you might be able to report on Thursday, you might not be able to report on Tuesday. So I think that's great advice, following people with whom you have a track record of knowing what they write about and what they talk about. I want to spend some time talking about these data centers. You've just done a big piece on it, and we have a poll. I'm sure you saw it that just came out here in California where people are saying, nah, we don't want them. But yet, still, I don't know if we know all of the implications, and that's something you have been doing a deep dive on, so we'll talk about that when we come forward. Adam Mahoney is with us. He's writing for Capital B News, and you're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
Thanks for starting your morning off with a voice that speaks truth to power and the powerless, getting to the heart of what matters most in our community. This is where authentic conversation meets real action. From breaking news and politics to culture and community solutions, this is where you hear perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. This is where we come together, get informed, and make change happen. You're inside First Things First with Dominique DePrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
Good morning, sunshine. You make my day.
Don't be anxious or confused about AI. Take control of your career when you get the skills to tackle real business problems and design specialized solutions. HR Dive reported that entry-level talent with applied AI credentials can receive up to a 25% salary boost. But where do you find training that you can trust? Future-proof your career and deliver more value with Humans Lead the Way AI. Their hybrid learning courses use practical definitions, real-world examples, and strategic insights to help you and your team understand AI with confidence. No magic, no hacks, no shortcuts. Just practical knowledge that helps you use AI more successfully. Don't wait. AI can never replace people who know how to use it well. Register for courses today at humansleadtheway.com. That's humansleadtheway.com.
She's sharp. She's fearless.
I don't know what they told you, but if they told you that cutting me off is how we're going to get clicks, stop it now.
She's that girl, and she's bringing all of that to your radio this summer. Amanda Seals is here.
I am Amanda Seals.
Comedian, artist, actress, activist, truth teller. The woman who never bites her tongue is coming to KBLA Talk 1580. And baby. The conversations are about to be unmatched. Every Friday, she's going to be lit noon to 2 p.m. and back again 4 to 6 p.m. Starting Friday, July 17th, only on KBLA Talk 1580. Amanda Seals, keeping it real, keeping it raw, and keeping it rooted. Politics, pop culture, black excellence, the stuff they don't want us talking about. Amanda's talking about all of it.
You keep interrupting me when I'm talking, and you don't want to hear the point that I'm going to make.
The point that
and
you're
yet you
raising.
want me to respect your point. And that's not how a debate works.
This is not your average radio show. This is a Seals Summer. Fridays, noon to 2, 4 to 6. Starting Friday, July 17th. Only on KBLA Talk 1580. Don't just listen. Tune in.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, call now.
800-550-9651.
Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS.
Generous programs are now available that can give you a fresh start.
Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their IRS problems.
We have over 1,000 5-star reviews on Google and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau.
You don't need to be afraid of the IRS any longer. End your tax nightmare today by visiting us online at TRA.com
or call 800-550-9651. That's 800-550-9651.
Tax Relief Advocates. Real solutions for real people.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DePrima on First Things First.
Oh, well, this is pretty deep, but deep is good. Good for your brain, good for your internal data system. So we're hearing a lot about AI data centers now. Adam Mahoney, he's a reporter with Capital B, joining me right now, has just written an article dropped this week. Meta's $250 billion Louisiana data center is the most expensive in the U.S. This is because AI requires these giant centers, and they're going up quickly, and they have I think a lot of consequences that no one really thought about. Let's start with the basic, because we hear about it and we know that AI sucks up a lot of water, but yet also people are embracing it in a way that is pretty indiscriminate. Talk to me about how you got drawn into this, how this grabbed your attention, and what was your hook? You said, "Oh my, is it the headline because it's so huge?" What was it that made you set out to figure this out?
Yeah, are you referencing this Louisiana story in specific, or just?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I I've been living in New Orleans for the last couple of years, and we saw this project get approved about 2 years ago. And as we were trying to figure out what the specific angle for us at Capital B was, obviously it's one, how is this going to impact Black folks? So it is located in a rural parish, or a rural county in northwest Louisiana. That is the two closest towns are 80% Black. And, the folks that live there, they've lived there for generations. Many of them are descendants of people who were enslaved in that area. But one of the really interesting things for us was that this is located in the Bible Belt, in the Mississippi Delta. And, it is a heavily religious place. There are more churches than, restaurants. But there is a clear fault line and division amongst how people see this massive $250 billion data center coming into their community. And that fault line goes along religious differences, particularly amongst, white Baptist folks, and Black Southern Baptist folks who are seeing this project differently in terms of the injustices that it might bring. The white churches have been trying to use it as a way to, grow their religion, to grow the amount of people coming into their parishes, to kind of evangelize the, construction workers, while the Black church leaders have, seen what this couldn't do to their community. There's already been displacement. There's been evictions of low-income people, of trailer parks. There's not been access to jobs for Black folks. So they're doing what the church has always done in the U.S. Amongst Black peoples, and using it as a way to kind of implement social justice and social equity. So that is kind of a convoluted Louisiana situation that's going on right now. But across the country, what we're seeing is, this division amongst the environmental injustices that these data centers are bringing. To your point, they're using a lot of water. They're bringing air pollution because they're being powered by gas and fossil fuel power plants, and they're not really giving any kind of economic benefit to a lot of these places because the jobs are not trickling down into the communities. And really, once a data center is functioning, it requires really few jobs to keep the computer online. It is really for higher educated people who are coming in from the West Coast and from the East Coast and to these southern communities where they have really no connection.
I was looking at your article, just this idea that this white church that you profile is feeding those workers. They think it's necessary to have church feeds for Meta workers who are actually being paid by Meta. And then when all of those things are built, those folks go away. I mean, your article says 7,000 people, workers, to build the center are flooding into a town that only has 20,000 people. And so suddenly there's all this activity, and probably the restaurants and other places are benefiting. And you said that you observed Black and white low-income residents being kicked out of trailer park housing so that they can house these workers who will pay more. But what happens when they go away? What happens when the construction is done?
Yeah, I mean, that is the question, right? I mean, the state government who, gave Meta tax cuts and incentives for building in Louisiana, they argue that it will create kind of this economic boon around the county. And even after the construction ends, this place is going to be desirable and they're going to have folks move in. But the reality is, if there's no other investment outside of this data center, there's nothing for people here. It is a place where over a third of people live in poverty. People, are struggling already to put food on the table and to remain housed. And then you have 7,000 construction workers move in who need homes themselves, right? They need somewhere to sleep. So we have seen that displacement. They are building new homes, but once again, they're going to be at a price point where the people from there can't afford them. So even if it does go the way that the state argues it might go in a decade or so, where we see more people move in, it just means there's going to be more displacement. And, across this country, when we see displacement, it is typically Black folks. It's typically low-income people who are pushed from their homes. So that's a fear that a lot of people are living in.
Yeah, it seems like almost like locusts, comes in, changes the landscape of a city or a small town, and then moves on to the next place they're building. I've seen a couple of reports, and I haven't verified them, but it seems like a couple of them, one of them was, I think, 60 Minutes actually, about how the people that are living near these data centers are suffering because of the noise and the pollution and the impact on their water supply, their local water supply. I would think that you would have more concern among the white residents about that.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely depends. I think in some places, so in Louisiana's case, in Meta's case, it is in a pretty rural community, and they bought out a lot of the properties like immediately on the fence line of the data center. But in other rural places across the South, and in Kentucky and in Georgia and in Mississippi and Alabama, where a lot of this build-out is happening, there are people who are like refusing to sell their properties, right? Because it's been in their family for so long, or because they're farmers and the land means something to them. And yeah, those are the people who you're seeing their access to water be strained. They are being choked by air pollution from gas turbines and new fossil fuel power facilities. So yeah, there are these very immediate environmental impacts, and it's difficult, and it's a playbook that big tech is using right now. They are moving intentionally into rural places, one, because that's where the land is available right now, and then land is cheaper. But also when you think about like kind of the political economy and the political power that rural places have, it's a lot more fragmented. And it's easier for an industry or a company with billions of dollars behind it to move in and kind of force its will than if it was in a big city, for example.
I mean, and you point out that it's the southern towns. A lot of the southern towns are the ones, or southern regions, not just towns, are the ones that are being targeted by big tech. It's partly that. It's probably partly that they tend to be more politically friendly too, right? I mean, this idea that, the Trumpian or MAGA idea that the climate emergency is made up, and then you also point to some kind of theological Christian philosophy that says we are men, people, humans, and particularly Christians are meant to control nature, not just benefit from it. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was a kind of a point we interrogated in this article, in the South specifically, because this is where, pre-Great Migration and kind of the build out of the Midwest, the South is where it was the industrial kind of, corridor in a lot of ways. And as we've seen, especially with the petrochemical industry, so oil and gas and refineries and things like that along the Gulf Coast, communities here have accepted industrial pollution and environmental harm as like a part of the norm. Like this is the way that, our country is supposed to operate because it has been operating for so long. So when these new companies are moving in with data centers, they do have that belief on their side. But there's also they have that religious angle. There was a Pew Research study a couple of years ago. They do like a kind of religious census every few years. And Louisiana specifically had one of the highest response rates for people that said, just like you said, that God gave humans the right to use the earth to its benefit, whatever that means, right? It could mean cutting down forests and killing rivers and animals and doing all of that to our benefit. And that's a really strong belief here in the state of Louisiana. So once again, that's another point that is on the side of these industrial companies and these tech companies if they're coming in to build new projects.
Yes, indeed. Of course, it's the infinite growth theory too. Like, okay, even if God did say use it however you want, it's not infinite. So when you use it however you want to the point where the planet is no longer habitable, what then? H2O, we know the ingredients, but we still don't know how to make it. Adam Mahoney is my guest. We'll continue the conversation after news, traffic, and sports. I'm Dominique DePrima for KBLA Talk 1580.
You can't fix what you won't face. And we face it every day. This is KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. A black man from Denver, Colorado is suing two police officers after a federal judge ruled they had no legal basis to pull his vehicle over. His attorney, David Lane.
We're not asking for any specific amount of money. It's just accountability.
Ajante Forrest says the traffic stop led to 2 months in jail and major personal losses before the case was ultimately thrown out. Reverend Al Sharpton's National Action Network is organizing a march on Washington August 28th to mark the 63rd anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s historic I Have a Dream speech. Organizers say this comes in response to recent court rulings they say weakened long-standing protections for minority voters. And a viral photo tied to the death of Black Mississippi teen Nolan Wells has been debunked. Friends and family say the image of him in the pool was taken before Wells disappeared and urge the public to avoid spreading misinformation. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Attention Ram owners. Complete Recall 67A
Get $500 and a chance to win a getaway to Miami for two to see the final race of the season. Plus, meet Brendan Butterbean Queen. Learn more and schedule at CumminsRecall.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Philadelphia 76ers continue to be the most diligent NBA team in pursuing LeBron in free agency. NBA sources are reporting that the Sixers' best players, Tyrese Maxey, Jaylen Brown, and Joel Embiid, have had direct conversations with LeBron. All three have a connection to the 41-year-old future Hall of Famer. Maxey has worked out with LeBron in previous off seasons and calls LeBron a big brother. LeBron spoke up for Brown in February when Brown was with Boston. LeBron said Brown should have been a top MVP candidate. LeBron and Embiid won a gold medal together when they played for Team USA in the 2024 Summer Olympics in Paris. If Golden State, Cleveland, and Miami are still in the running for LeBron, they better step up their game. The Philadelphia 76ers are not playing. Even Sixers owner Bob Myers has made a pitch to LeBron. No timetable yet from LeBron on making a decision. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Our voices aren't the minority opinion.
They're the American conscience.
This is KBLA Talk 1580.
This is America.
This November, you'll decide who leads California. So shouldn't you hear directly from the people asking for your vote? Join us for California Voices, a political town hall and ballot forum, Saturday, October 3rd, 2026. Meet candidates running for governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and other major statewide and local offices, including mayor of Los Angeles, city attorney, and LA County sheriff. Get clear, nonpartisan breakdowns of the propositions on your November ballot, both sides, no spin. And ask your questions directly, in real conversation, face to face. California Voices is brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 and the Empowerment Congress, giving you the information you need before you vote. Mark your calendar, Saturday, October 3rd, 2026, California Voices. Follow KBLA 1580 for details and download the KBLA 1580 app. Your vote, your voice. Be there.
There is no denying that we've always been the conscience of this country. KBLA Talk 1580 is progressive talk radio built for our community, by our community, and with hosts who look like you, live near you, and care about what you care about. 50,000 watts of truth right here in Southern California. KBLA Talk 1580. Listen live on your AM radio dial at 1580 or stream us live on our KBLA1580.com website or on our free KBLA 1580 app.
Unapologetically progressive.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. Beating in rhythm to the world you've created. But every time you drive after drinking, the music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed. A message from Nitsa in the Ad Council.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Michael's Daughter Foundation is dedicated to inspiring youth and resilience through storytelling, arts, filmmaking, and enrichment programs for youth and families in under-resourced communities and system-impacted individuals. The Michael's Daughter Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit providing free and low-cost arts programs to youth and families from under-resourced communities, both system-impacted youth and those affected by the incarceration of a loved one. 1 in 43 children in America have a parent incarcerated. 70% of those children are expected to end up in prison. Through filmmaking, animation, theater, and writing, they help young people express themselves, build confidence, and imagine new possibilities. Beyond the arts, they offer financial literacy workshops, emergency support, and scholarships. Because thriving takes more than talent, it takes access. To learn more about the impact of Michael Daughters Foundation and how you can be a part of the movement, please visit their website, michaelsdaughterfoundation.com. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where everybody is somebody and nobody is a stranger. You belong here.
Adam Mahoney, you got him talking in the chat about domination versus dominion, the doctrine of Christian discovery, and all such as that. But I find it fascinating how, and you put your finger on this in your piece, how the traditional or theological, the religious, is mobilized whenever the corporate wants to do things that might be objected to by certain segments of the population, whether it's our enslavement or right now these centers. It's interesting how they just jump into action and they're suddenly very religious.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, they've used it. It's something that the power structures in this country have used time and time again, and then abandoned, right, when they don't need it anymore. And in the case of, this data center in Louisiana specifically, we do have a governor who has tapped in and is a part of the Southern Baptist Convention as well, and has tapped into this belief system to push this project through, right? It's something that we see has benefited to a specific economic and demographic class in this country over Black folks.
Are you tracking how this is, how these bans are landing and if they are even having any impact at all? Because, as you said, most of these data centers are already planned for rural areas, the Deep South, whatever. I even read that they were trying to buy up indigenous lands for AI data centers. New York has put a big restriction on new centers, a moratorium actually. So does that have any impact at all? Were they even going to really build one in New York? Or, do you know what I'm saying? Like, is this just theater, or is it actually going to have an impact?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it's something we have been tracking, and we're attempting to put kind of an explainer article together. But what we've seen so far is that these moratoriums are happening in more progressive places, cities, and in the case of New York State. But these are not necessarily the places where data centers are being built in scale right now. They are places where, folks are attempting to build out smaller scale data centers. But when people are thinking about the environmental threats and the land threats, those are the hyperscale projects. And the hyperscale projects require so much land that, they are not being built in places like California and in New York in the same rate that they are being built in the South. But we did just recently see last week PG County in Maryland, which is, a Black middle class county. They just passed a 2-year ban on data centers in direct response to the build out that they've been seeing around them in the DMV area, which is now being known as Data Center Alley. It's where 70% of all kind of computing power right now via data centers is happening. So we have been seeing some kind of success, but at large, it does look like it's happening in places where there is the political power, but not where the issue is not the strongest.
DMV, meaning the DC area, is not the rural South. How is Data Center Alley thriving there?
Yeah, so this is where a lot of the facilities were built before this kind of mass investment from tech companies. So in 2020, 2019, and up until 2024, that was kind of the heart of where a lot of these projects were being built. And it is because these data centers need to tap into, to make them as cheap as possible for the developers, they need to tap into already existing energy infrastructure. They need to, tap into power plants and power facilities. And they also have to have the political support. So that's where it was happening most often and most strongly over the last couple of years, was in Virginia specifically. But now communities there are pushing back because they are seeing this is the first level of impact, and they're seeing it in their electricity bills because they're subsidizing the massive electricity costs of these data centers. Prices have doubled and tripled, and that's really where people are pushing back now. in more urbanized areas like Virginia. It is via the affordability crisis and the inability of people to pay their bills, and they're saying that there's, seemingly an injustice behind it.
Right. Well, the L.A. Times, I know the New York Times today has an article about how these data centers are adding billions of dollars in electricity costs to different states. They list 13 of them here, saying it's going to add $6.3 billion in additional costs that get passed on to consumers and also small businesses because the data centers suck up so much power. Explain to me why that affects me, the consumer. I would think if the data center sucks up power, then Meta has to pay for that. Why do I have to pay for it?
Yeah, that's what you would think or hope as a consumer. But a lot of these tech companies are coming into these places either striking agreements with utility companies, so they're paying at a lower rate, or one of the big issues that we're seeing now as they're coming on in such large scale is that we need to build new power plants. So places, in the case of Meta here in Louisiana, they have to build at least three new power plants to keep this data center online. So how that is working is us as ratepayers are subsidizing the development of these power plants, even though you're not going to be benefiting from them in the same way. So a lot of it, does have to go with kind of these so-called economic benefits and agreements that these corporations are coming into with state governments and with utility companies without really giving ratepayers a say. But there are some places, Georgia has been trying to work on a kind of bill of rights around data centers in terms of clearly outlining the costs and who would be bearing the costs, and other states across the country are slowly attempting to do that work. It's not happening as fast as the development and the construction of these data centers are happening.
Right, as usual, the technology outpaces the law, the legal understanding of the technology or the regulation of it. But in this case, it seems to be a little bit more of an existential crisis, because if it's sucking up water and raising prices in the middle of an affordability crisis, then that feels more urgent. I know that we weren't told that, but when you think about it, if the infrastructure, that's existing infrastructure, will not support the power needs of a data center, what you're saying then is that the taxpayers have to go ahead and pay for new power infrastructure that's not being put in place to benefit them, but is being put in place to benefit Meta or whoever's building that power center, OpenAI, whoever it is. So then the taxpayers are actually underwriting the costs of these new technologies, and we don't get paid out as shareholders. We just have to give them corporate welfare.
I mean, to boil it down, that is, a pretty accurate description of what it is like, for an everyday American in this day. Texas specifically, which is also a major hub for this data center growth over the last couple of years, they have, subsidized over $50 billion worth of new power plants, which means that who's actually subsidizing it is taxpayers, right? And they've also openly acknowledged that it's somewhere between 70 and 80% of this new need for electricity is coming directly from AI companies. So they are telling people, that is the real reason behind this growth. But as a taxpayer, you really don't have much say, right, in determining what that fund is being used for. You can vote in an elected official that you might think is working in your best interest, but we have seen that's not always the case.
That's not reliable. But what is what's coming to mind for me right now, Adam, is that a lot of people. I have at least one friend that moved to Texas to avoid California taxes, and people move to the South or they move to Nevada thinking, well, California charges high taxes. Well, you might not be paying high taxes in Texas, but if you're paying for data center power plants, that's making your electricity more and more expensive, your power more and more costly. That is a kind of a tax. It's just hidden. We won't call it a tax. It'll be called cost of living. I have another California friend who moved to Georgia because cheaper housing and cheaper land. Well, it was when she bought it, but now everything's going up. And so these seemingly cheap states run by seemingly affordability conscious Republicans, it sounds like they're just shifting the costs and hiding them as regular consumer bills rather than taxes.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good point, and also speaks to kind of, we're in a delayed stage of understanding what the South, or what the Sun Belt looks like these days. I think a lot of people, when they think about affordability and taxes, are thinking about pre-pandemic, because it was a lot cheaper in the South and the Sun Belt. But since 2020, the Sun Belt cost of living has been rising faster than the coast. But we still see people moving there with this understanding, or with this belief that it is cheaper. But to your point, yeah, there are all of these kind of hidden costs. You know, property taxes are higher, or thinking about, you are in the South, so you are in proximity to flooding and hurricanes and storms. So your home insurance is also more expensive in the South than it is in the coast. So all those little things do add up. And then on top of that, you could be subsidizing data centers that are taking, land and harming the environment and potentially harming your health when you think about some of the impacts of pollution.
Not to mention, there's a lot of benefits you won't get. They don't have paid family leave. They don't have a lot of the kinds of disability and other benefits that we are used to on the coast because of those Republican austerity policies that say, we're not going to tax you and we're not going to protect you. You're on your own, bud. 800-920-1580. That's the number if you want to get into the conversation. You can also jump on YouTube at KBLA 1580. Adam Mahoney is a journalist currently writing for Capital B News, and you're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominic DePrima when we come forward.
I think my LADWP bill is due, but nothing's come in the mail yet.
You still get paper bills?
Yeah, it's how I keep track of things.
Clearly, it's not working. You can't remember when it's due. You need to sign up for paperless billing. I get an email when my LADWP bill is due. I never have to wait on the mail, and I can see 7 years of bills in my online account. Plus, first-time signups get a $10 bill credit.
$10 bill credit for new LADWP paperless billing signups. LADWP.com/paperless.
Going to a World Cup match in LA this summer? Ditch the parking stress and ride Metro. With direct service from across LA County, it's the easy way to get there for just $1.75 each way.
Listen up, KBLA delegation. We have something you need to hear. Right now, you may qualify for low-cost home internet. And we're not talking about a catch. This is real. Many internet service providers offer low-cost internet plans if anyone in your household is enrolled in CalFresh, Medi-Cal, SSI, or is income eligible. There are a lot of families in our community who deserve to be connected. Here's all you do. Call 844-461-7893. That's the Get Connected call center. Real people ready to help you enroll today. Or go online to internetforallnow.org to find a provider near you. You may also qualify for a low-cost computer through Human IT. Connectivity is not a luxury. In 2026, it's a necessity. And you deserve access just like everybody else. Call 844-461-7893. That's 844-461-7893. KBLA's got you. If you missed any of this, you can always go to our website at KBLA1580.com. Brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 in partnership with the California Emerging Technology Fund, CETF.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 joins you in standing for voting rights. The midterm election campaign season is here now. The 2028 presidential election is right around the corner. When We All Vote is a leading national nonpartisan initiative on a mission to change the culture around voting and to increase participation in each and every election by helping to close the race and age gap. Created by Michelle Obama, When We All Vote brings together individuals, institutions, brands, and organizations to register new voters across the country and advance civic education for the entire family and voters of every age to build an informed and engaged electorate for today and generations to come. When We All Vote empowers their supporters and volunteers to take action through voting, advocating for their rights, and holding their elected officials accountable. It's all in for 2026 and 2028. Please visit whenweallvote.org to stand up for your rights, voting rights. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
If you have unfiled taxes or are in debt to the IRS, this is important news. Did you know the IRS has programs specifically designed to help people struggling with tax debt? Powerful tax assistance programs that can save you thousands if you qualify. No one knows these programs better than the experts at Optima Tax Relief, America's most trusted tax resolution firm. A-rated by the Better Business Bureau, their award-winning tax attorneys and licensed professionals have resolved over $3 billion of tax debt for their clients. One call to Optima can start the process, helping to put an end to your worries about wage garnishment, asset seizure, and other aggressive IRS actions. Find the best options to solve your tax problems. Call the experts at Optima Tax Relief today for a free consultation.
Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Broadcasting live from Leimert Park, USA. Welcome back to your home for unapologetically progressive radio. KBLA Talk 1580.
Well, I had about 4 or 5 other things I wanted to ask you about Adam Mahoney, but we probably won't have time to get to them, so you're going to have to come back again. Fahima in the chat wants to ask you about the data center, the 30 megawatt data center on the campus of Fisk University. It's being proposed as part of their master plan there. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's something we've been covering at Capital B. We have a HBCU reporter who's been covering that and intensely. So if you want to check that out, you can go to capitalbnews.org. But what I do know is that there has been some, alumni and student pushback, but it doesn't really seem to be reaching, any movement of stopping it from going forward at this point. But they are calling on, alumni and different, student groups to get in that fight. One of the things, though, that we are seeing across HBCU campuses is that there has been kind of a growing number of relationships and partnerships between tech companies and HBCUs because there's this idea that, you don't want black folks to be left behind by the AI boom. So there are programs where, they're training HBCU students in artificial intelligence, and that has also been lent itself to the development or the potential development of data centers on campus. So, who's to say what the actual interests are of these tech companies as they're doing these projects? But that is a reality that we're seeing.
Yeah, and HBCUs, same as the foundations, facing different kinds of threats to their funding sources based on the current political climate, may be more vulnerable to sort of exploitation or impact by tech companies, by big tech.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you about the cyclosporiasis or rhiasis or whatever it is, whatever this parasite is that's got everybody freaked out and giving them an excuse not to eat salad. I don't know if you're tracking that or not, but it seems like one of those, and I know it hasn't made its way all the way, as far as I've been able to tell, it's not big in California, but it's spreading across the country.
Yeah, I mean, I've been tracking it as a news consumer, not necessarily from a journalist perspective. But, one of the things that I have thought was interesting, so to say, you can always point everything towards federal cuts. And, we saw kind of the tracking of this at the CDC level it was cut under the Trump administration and under DOGE last year. And I've, also been thinking about what it means that there's been, this immigration crackdown, right? And we have, I would assume, less farm workers than we had a few years ago, and then people are working and living in fear. How that's impacted, the processes of farming, of irrigation work, of collecting and growing food. All of those things have been disrupted by larger federal policies, and it does feel like they could be all intertwined.
Yeah, and I was reading about how the fact that this Health and Human Services Department decided to stop tracking these types of parasites is a logical that this could be the result. And I hate to sound petty, but I hope Elon and RFK both get a healthy dose of the cyclopariasis, because it sounds very unpleasant. Apparently, they're saying don't buy like pre-cut lettuce or pre-cut greens. Get your own whole head of lettuce or whole bunch of kale and then wash it as thoroughly as you can. And so to me that means don't go to those salad chains and stuff, because it's passed from fecal matter on people's hands, for people that don't wash their hands and handle your food. And then that goes onto your dish, onto your plate.
Yeah, and I read, if you can cook your greens to a certain temperature, I think it's 158, if I'm not mistaken, that will kill the parasite. But, it's also just best to avoid it if you can, and if it, you feel it could impact you in a negative way. I
mean, to me, it's ironic because a country that is living on processed foods, upon which no parasite can probably dwell, is now afraid of greens. And I would imagine that the risk of getting this cyclopariasis is probably lower than the risk of you dying from heart disease and high blood pressure from having no enzymes or leafy greens in your system. I'm just guessing, but now everyone's going to, I can't have salad, I might get a parasite. Let me go get some fast food which I know is carcinogenic. Not that it might have a parasite, it is going to cause cancer. The irony of that, with this administration and what they're clearly prioritizing is killing me, not literally, but figuratively killing me. Adam Mahoney, tell us how to follow you, your writings, your musings online, and all of that.
Yeah, you can find me on, all of the social medias at Adam L. Mahoney. And you can always read and follow Capital B at capitalbnews.org. Sign up for our newsletter. And if you're inclined, we do love reader support and donations. But you can catch all of our work at capitalbnews.org.
Yeah, and those donations are important. You just mentioned that you guys are a nonprofit newsroom. We are not a nonprofit newsroom, but we're small, black-owned, independent. We don't have one of these giant corporations behind us that owns billboards and other things. So it is great. And I imagine even a small donation would make a difference, right?
Yeah, 100%.
capitalbnews.org, capitalbnews.org. You can start reading articles. You can start collecting reporters that you do trust. And I see at least 5 articles you've written here, Adam, that would definitely warrant not just a read, but a pretty serious conversation. Among them, black burial grounds are disappearing as families fight to protect them. He wrote that June 8th. And that's just the kind of thing our ancestors would want us to track. Adam Mahoney, thank you for the great work that you're doing, and thanks for joining me this morning.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Amazing black men journalists must be my theme today. Didn't realize it. Speaking of underrated, Jared Hill joins me next hour. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. A black man from Denver, Colorado is suing 2 police officers after a federal judge ruled they had no legal basis to pull his vehicle over. His attorney, David Lane.
We're not asking for any specific amount of money. It's just